feels like more than 7 or 8 months ago since I stood here speaking to you about kind of the vision for the future of St Felix. And a lot has gone on, I think, since then. And hopefully, as parents, you've seen visibly some of the changes that have taken place over the last 7 or 8 months in terms of the facilities, where, for example, the prep department we've now nearly finished, the refurbishment, the renovation, to the entranceway, which hopefully is looking a lot smarter and creating a kind of stronger first impression, to the pitches at the back, both of which are in the process of being reseeded to make them fantastic playing surfaces for your sons and daughters, to the sports hall, where obviously the new changing room facilities are being put in place and again will be ready for September. And a lot of those changes are obviously material changes in terms of the fabric of the school and improving the facilities, the ambience and the environment for your sons and daughters, but also importantly as well, actually, for the staff who work here as well. But actually, in the end, whilst facilities are hugely important, it is the provision that is the most important element for you as parents, for us as educationists, and for your sons and daughters in terms of what they will receive from us, both inside and outside the classroom. And it was with that in mind when I spoke to you back in September that one of the things I highlighted at that point in terms of the future of St Felix was very much about the changes that we would be making to the curriculum, the educational provision that we would be offering to your sons and daughters, and the breadth and scope of it as well. And so it gives me great pleasure tonight to sort of talk you through the work that we've been doing in order to create this, and to sort of highlight what I think are some very unique elements of the provision moving forward, and why it will help your sons and daughters excel, not just academically, but also in terms of developing those broader life skills, which will be fundamental in terms of their progress, not just at St Felix, but also beyond. So what is it that actually underpins the changes that we're making? What is the ideology and the philosophy that sits behind what we're actually doing with the new curriculum? And here you've got sort of 4 bullet points that I hope actually sort of encapsulate and highlight what it is that we're trying to achieve. And that first one, to me, is key. Great schools are about a broad, holistic experience. So it always has to be underpinned by the academic element of the school. After all, that is the most important element of the provision. But a truly holistic provision with clear co-curricular opportunities for your sons and daughters, backed up by really strong pastoral support and networks, are the keys to a fundamentally strong education provision. And within that, what we're trying to do is create a shape of the day and a shape of the week that actually works and maximises the opportunity for us as a school to give the best possible provision. So when one talks about the kind of shape of the day and shape of the week, it doesn't sound particularly interesting as a concept. But actually, timings and infrastructure are actually what then enables you to deliver a really excellent provision. And within that, it's recognising that St Felix is a non-selective school. We have a huge range and breadth of academic ability. It's one of the great strengths of this school, that actually it can be very individualised and personalised in the approach that it takes to give your sons and daughters that unique experience. And within all of that, and this isn't going to sort of happen overnight in September, but over a period of time, it's actually creating a curriculum that incorporates the beautiful environment that we're in, a rural coastal location, where environment and environmental studies are increasingly important, and actually interweave that into the curriculum moving forward. but also using it as a mechanism via increased opportunities for service and service learning to interact with the local community. One of the things I've tried to do in the first 6 or 7 months has been to really embrace who we are, the community that we live in, and hold events with various kind of community officials and leaders, and really try to utilise that to ensure we have a broader range of opportunities. So what does that look like in terms of the shape of the day and the shape of the week? I mean, this in many ways is the sort of slightly more kind of factual and less exciting element, but actually what it begins to do is it creates the narrative and it underpins what we can actually deliver as a school. So lessons will start at 8:40. Why? To actually maximise effective teaching time, with registration at 8:35 prior to lesson 1 and in the classroom of lesson 1. It makes it a very efficient start to the day, so that we can get cracking into lessons, learning as soon as possible. Lessons are going to be 55 minutes long. Is that the absolute right time? There is an absolute right time for a length of lesson. Most educational research would suggest somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour is about right in terms of child's attention span and their ability to absorb the information within that lesson. You may or may not know, at the moment, lessons start and finish at the same time. Well, actually, we're going to have a 5-minute gap between each lesson to enable every lesson to finish at the right time and start at the right time, which again seems simplistic, but actually really important in terms of routine and making sure that we establish really good habits in terms of the learning environment. And also, the benefit of 55 and 5 means that things add up to an hour. And actually, you can create a bit of a logical pattern to when things actually start and finish. The structure that we're putting in, and this to me is really important, actually enables more teaching time with 1 extra lesson per week for both GCSE subjects. And actually, current year 10 will benefit from this going into year 11, and current year 12 will benefit going into year 13 as well. So it's not just those starting GCSE and A-level, it's also those who've already done year 1 of those qualifications. We're moving to a 2-week timetable, what will be affectionately known as week A and week B. Why a 2-week timetable? Well, actually, by spreading what it is that you want to achieve over a 2-week period rather than a 1-week period, it gives you much greater flexibility in terms of how you can move things around, timetable more effectively, create a balanced provision for your sons and daughters. So for us, it was a logical step in terms of ensuring the best provision. So Emily Chapel will move from senior school to 1:35 on a Monday and Friday, again, because it maximises our time in the day. And actually, again, creates a kind of efficiency, a fluidity, and a real sense of purpose to everything that we will be doing. For the prep department, it's going to be 1 p.m. on a Monday. That's just a useful tool in a sense because it enables myself to get to both the centres, which actually is really, really useful, and indeed vice versa for others who want to cut across. Chapel for the prep department will remain as it is now in its Friday morning slot, because actually that works really neatly. The next one's really important because actually aligning prep and senior in terms of timings means that what we can now do is have a much more fluid arrangement in terms of staffing. And actually this will benefit both prep and senior in terms of being able to utilise the human resources that we have in terms of our staff much better across both prep and senior, where it would be appropriate to do so. At the moment, because of the different timings, that's almost impossible. Whereas now, actually, it opens up and frees up the ability to kind of, for people who've got expertises, to actually utilise those across both prep and senior. Split lunch is just a logical kind of part of that process. One of the key changes within this curriculum, which I'll talk about in more detail in a minute, which includes sport as well as clubs, activities, academic extension, is going to be blocked into the timetable in a more kind of clearer and coherent fashion, with 6 periods per week. Whereas at the moment, obviously, much of it is sort of tagged on to the end of the day. That will look very different in terms of the new timetable. And I'll talk more about how our approach to the co-curricular is slightly changing. Within all of this, for years 5 to 13, we're introducing something called the Saint Felix School, which enables us to put everything into the curriculum that we feel is a very important skill, qualification, certification for your sons and daughters that doesn't naturally fit into any particular subject area. Often they are interdisciplinary, really important skill in terms of being able to think across different faculty areas or subject areas. And it enables us to ensure that there is a broad programme beyond just the academic curriculum, which everyone will do, all the way through years 5 to 13. What we'll do here in the next few slides, and please don't try and kind of scrutinise the minutiae of this, because this isn't actually how it will look. This is purely to show that actually everything fits. So a student timetable wouldn't actually look like this. But it begins to show you across Key Stage 1 how it looked in terms of, you can see, just for example, the co-curricular actually being timetabled across both week A and week B, as well as obviously elements like Forest School and developing those specialisms beyond English, maths and phonics into other subject areas. And again, we can see something similar here for Key Stage 2. Key Stage 2, the day goes on slightly longer, with the day finishing at 4:55 across Key Stage 2, all the way through to the top of senior school. And again, you can see the Key Stage 2 here, as well as a greater sort of sense of different academic subjects, that co-curricular element, as well as obviously time in Forest School and performing arts woven into the curriculum. And obviously it goes on into Key Stage 3, 4, where we've obviously got our GCSE subjects by the time we get into Key Stage 4. I'll just pause a little bit on Key Stage 5, obviously sixth form. They'll have less free time, which I think is a really good thing. I think whilst you need some independent learning in the sixth form, that's absolutely right and true. I think it's about balance. And actually, I think more time in the classroom in the sixth form is highly effective, which is why we've been introducing extra lesson per subject. And with everything else they're doing across the co-curricular, the Saint Felix diploma, which will have a very heavy careers bent within it as we move into the sixth form, I think means that they'll be kind of busier, more occupied, more focused. Still enough independent learning wrapped around it, but a more streamlined approach. So what underpins the curriculum? So firstly, it's seeing years 5 to 13 as a sort of continuum of education. Why? To make sure that gap between sort of year 6 and coming into the senior school is a seamless transition from one into the other. I think education from reception to years 4 is a slightly separate entity. We're moving to a faculty-based approach. 4 faculties that will drive forward the academic side of the school, drive forward teaching and learning, pedagogy, the collaboration and professional dialogue. And those 4 faculties will be STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, languages and literature, humanities and social sciences, and the creative and performing arts. We've appointed 4 new heads of faculty. All 4 of them, who will be joining us in September, are coming externally from different schools. And they are going to bring, I think, a real energy and drive and passion and change in these particular areas as we look to create a really dynamic education built around these faculties. The other reason for doing it is we are a smaller school. And actually, if subjects kind of act alone, they are less powerful. But bringing them together into faculties means that actually they can do many more things. together, and therefore for your sons and daughters in terms of events that they put on, in terms of kind of trips, visits, and inspire days. So I've tasked each of the 4 heads of faculties with creating 2 days each in the academic year. One day, which will be internal for our students, maybe with a particular key stage they might focus on, as an Inspire Day. And then one day to actually bring in students from outside to excite about coming to St Felix as well. So each of those 4 heads are actually already looking at what they'll be putting on there. And as I said there, I just think bringing people together, professional dialogue, collaboration, actually will enhance everything that goes on in terms of those departments. GCSE. So we are slimming down in terms of how many GCs a student might do. This may well be a controversial area. In my view, actually, less is more. Since the grading has gone up from the old A star at GCSE to now it's 9 to 1. That has raised the bar in terms of actually accessing those higher grades, particularly grades at 6, 7, 8, and 9. And actually, in order to be able to access those higher grades, doing 10, 11, 12 GCSEs actually will negate that. And it becomes an exam factory. And actually, I think there's huge power in doing 8 subjects really well and developing expertise and mastery. But also, what we're going to put around that, in terms of the other things they do, will mean it's not just 8, it's actually 8 plus, in terms of they will all do the higher project qualification or the foundational project qualification, which is a piece of research in an area of their passion, which they can develop perhaps an area they want to do in the 6th form and begin to develop that level of mastery and expertise. I would consider that 8 would therefore be the norm and the expectation, but for some students, it might be right to do 7 or 6. And that is absolutely fine, and we'll create a programme around that for those students. We're also freeing up the GCSE options completely, other than maths and English language. Why? I think a force-fed diet of you will do 2 sciences, or you will do combined science, or you will do a body foreign language, or you will do a humanity-based subject, actually is a very draconian approach to education. My philosophy very much is about passion, and you find your passion in education and you have the opportunity to fulfill it. And for some students, chemistry, physics, biology, brilliant, fantastic. But there are other students, and plenty of them at St Felix, for whom it's drama, art, photography, textile. And actually, we need to free up those choices to enable that sense of individualism. Individualism is key, unlocks passion. Passion equals a love of learning, and ultimately will lead to, I think, better exam results as well. With all of this in mind, we're going to review our 6th form offering as well. No changes for September 24, I think we're changing enough without kind of then putting that into the mix. But during the course of 24-25, we will be looking at what we offer in the 6th form. A-levels are fantastic, don't worry, we're not going to go away. It's what we put around them, on top of them, beside them, above them, to create a package that is right for a much broader sense of kind of those formative years between 6 and 9. So that will be a review during the course of the year. And as mentioned, the St Felix School is going to provide an opportunity to extend and broaden that curriculum. That will happen from years 5 to 13, and with all sorts of opportunities which you'll see in a later slide, as well as incorporating, as they go up through the school, more focus on careers, higher education, and the life and world beyond St Felix. Within all this, as you heard me say at the beginning, mentoring and pastoral care is fundamental. It's like the bedrock. And actually, great teaching can lead to great outcomes, but great pastoral care is what kind of underpins And within that, as a smaller school, I think we already have a great deal of this. And I want to add to that in terms of individual mentoring for our students. I think it'd be incredibly powerful in terms of having someone who's going to be their guide, their advocate, their supporter, someone who can nudge them in the right direction every now and then, recalibrate their thinking. And most importantly, someone they know they can go to, who they've developed, I really hope, a positive relationship with. And that can be enormously powerful for individual students as they navigate what's not an easy pathway through education. When we all sit and look back at our own educational process, actually, we all had tricky times. We all had times when we needed that adult in our lives who wasn't that close, who was going to kind of help us, guide us, support us, inspire us as well, encourage us, make them ambitious as well, and aspiration, which is something that I'm really the co-curricular. To me, this is an important part of school life. And within an independent school setting, even more so is the case. Whether it's music, art, drama, sport, academic extension, modern United Nations, these are the things that actually can sprinkle the gold dust on top of everything else that the school might offer. So in order to make this a really effective provision, we're giving it time, and proper time, and allocated time, and within that there will be a kind of very clear programme that gives them opportunities and pathways to win. We also want to develop a sort of bit of a hybrid in terms of a traditional and non-traditional sporting model. It's funny, isn't it? Sort of independent education has been going on quite a long time. And 97, 98% of schools follow a very, very traditional sporting. And we're going to keep some of that because I think team sport is really important. I grew up playing team sport. I'd be the last person to want to get rid of it. But actually, as a smaller school, we also need to develop other opportunities and other potential options for our students, as well as the more traditional team sport. So as well as those still carrying on, we're looking into sports like golf, triathlon, equestrianism, surfing, etc., to actually give them a much broader sporting base. Because ultimately what we want them to do is find something they're going to enjoy and stick with for the rest of their life. And whilst for some that will be team sports, by the time I was 30, I played so much team sports, my body was broken. And actually, I couldn't play team sport anymore. And actually, what do you then fall back on in terms of your physical activity? But as well as the sport and offering a hybrid traditional and non-traditional model, it is about these other things as well. Whether it's Duke of Edinburgh John Muir Award, which is the junior version of Duke of Edinburgh, dance, which we're going to start up in the co-curriculum initially, but I'm really keen for it to be on the main curriculum by September 2025. I'd like it to be a GCSE option moving further down the line as well, but we'll start with it as a co-curricular offering, choir, orchestra. All of these things are going to be in that co-curricular program, with students given specific time to develop those talents. At the moment, quite often our students have to do them in a 30-minute lunch break or kind of at the end of the day. Here we're giving them a bit more time to follow those areas of passion and interest, which I think is really important. Round Square is an organisation that we're going to become part of. It's an organisation of internationalism where like-minded schools across the world, often slightly smaller schools, work together and collaborate on projects and service, which takes us to the last point there, which is that every year group from year 5 onwards will do half a term of service through the academic year. And that will either be a service project on-site or a service project locally, working with organisations such as the Old Hospital in Southwold, and working with perhaps the local kind of care homes, reading at primary schools, or some conservation work around our natural environment. To me, this is really important that ability to begin to give something back. I guess this kind of explains the ethos behind it a little bit, in terms of it not being just an add-on extra, but actually giving it sufficient time and space. But we're taking nothing away from the academic programme here. This has all come about by reconstructing the week and the day to actually enable this to have the space and the time that it deserves. And as with academia, it is about breadth and depth on the co-curriculum side as well. Laying foundation in the early years, offering those broad experiences in the middle years, and eventually, and this is a word I talk to in assembly quite a bit, particularly with our sixth form students when I see them in vision, building their brand. Who are they going to be? What is the story that they are telling? What are they going to tell their prospective employers? What are they going to tell on their UCAS application form for university? Who are they? What have they become? What have they learned? What have they enjoyed? What have they become passionate? And as well as their academic studies, this is really what also shapes them as an individual. What does it actually look like? Well, it looks like a triple, a double, and a single. So that is your 6 lessons across the week for the curriculum. The triple allows time, in essence, to do some of those larger activities that need to get off the site. So, for example, with equestrianism and golf, 2 of the non-traditional sports that we're going to begin to focus on, you have time to get off site and to do that particular sport and to come back at the end of the day, whereas otherwise that would be pretty difficult. It also means we can split time. So we might use the triples as 2 90 minutes or sometimes as 1 full triple. And indeed with the doubles, something similar, where they might do an hour of physical activity followed by an hour of something a little bit more cerebral in terms of their focus. And this gives you an idea. What might it actually look like for a student in the prep department? So, for example, you have student A who, on their triple, their first block of 90 minutes, so divided into 2, is doing OAA. What is that? Outdoor adventurous activities. In the second block, they're doing 90 minutes of junior rapid sport. In the double, they might be netball and coding, and then in the single, they're doing some clay sculpting. So it's a mixture of the physical, the academic, the creative, and actually using the 4 faculty areas quite a lot across this to begin to define different options that might be available. Here we see something similar for seniors as well. What you'll notice there is, gosh, there seems to be more choices for seniors. Why is that? Well, the idea is that actually, in the formative years, the options will be more guided by us to make sure they get a broad sense of opportunities. But then gradually, as they go through the school, actually you increase that optionality to allow them to begin to kind of follow their own action. And again, you've got some examples here. And you can see here in the Midlands, actually the single, for example, they're going to be focusing on the house shop, actually something that brings them all together, creating a kind of performance, and something that kind of unites them around the 4 different houses. So again, a combination of the arts, the physical, the academic, and the creative. We're also going to increase the amount of trips that are happening. We've already done it this year in terms of there's so many more trips happening this year. I was thrilled. I saw the email that went out a couple of hours ago about the opportunity for year 7, 8 and 9 to go off to Lords and to watch a women's T20 game. What an amazing opportunity to go to the home of cricket and see a fantastic game. They are so important. Being on site is wonderful, but getting them seeing other things, experiencing events and interacting with other students is massively important. So this gives you just a quick example of some of the residential trips, expeditions that we're going to look to put in to make sure as they go through the school, there are all sorts of opportunities for them. And with that, we're going to look at some major trips and tours as well on a 5-year process. Apologies if you can't quite read this. I will send out the presentation with my weekly newsletter on Friday so that you can have a look in a little bit more detail. But you can see with our major trips, if you look down the left-hand side, there's 4 different colours there. Academic enrichment trips, the arts, creative and performing trips, sport and outdoor adventurous activity trips, and then something that is more the cultural/service experience in terms of trips. And when we've absolutely finalised this, what we will be doing is we'll be sending it out to parents so that you can plan. So you can think, well, actually, there might be a trip in 2 years' time that would be absolutely right and appropriate for my son or daughter. So that rather than sort of suddenly being caught on the hoof and thinking, oh gosh, trip coming up and it's in 12 months' time, actually you can see, do you know what, there is a trip in 2026 that's going to be spot on for my son or daughter. And you can start to plan accordingly towards that. So I think it hopefully makes it easier from your perspective as well. Academic, we've got things like Battles trip on a sort of every 3 years. Washington as an interdisciplinary trip for art, for economics, for history, for politics. Wow, I mean, there's pretty much anything and everything you can do in Washington. Art trips, choir, etc. Orchestra, as we begin to develop that, tends to be more kind of Europe. Sports and outdoor adventurous activities tend to be more this country. And then cultural experience, we'll probably do a big one every couple of years. Looking at places like Nepal and Peru. And as we become around Square School, actually there might be opportunity to do that. That's something we'd hope to send out either at the end of this academic year, but more likely probably in September, and say, here it is, and also a rough cost. So you can just begin to think about what might be. And then we've got St Felix School. 1 period a week, years 5 to 9, 2 years 10 to 13. Years 11 and 13 we finish at the end of the Lent term because they've got quite important exams to then focus on in the summer term. And the idea is that you have sort of bronze level, year 6, silver, year 9, gold, year 11, and then by the time we get to year 13, with pass merit distinction at each level. And the idea here is that these are the skills that we really want them to learn that don't quite fit into the sort of the mainframe of academic subjects. And here, a mixture of core and optional modules, things like the Bronze Arsenal, where they actually develop their skills across all of the creative and performing arts. Crest Award is a science extension element. So again, fantastic for those students who want to develop their scientific skills. And all sorts of other elements there as well. And that's what it looks like. So, for example, I'm not going to read through all of it, don't worry. Just look at year 5, just as the example there at the top. I've divided it into 6 terms. We're not going to do a 6-term approach, it's just each one equals half a term. There will be the ISA Art Independent Schools Association art competition in that first half of the term. Followed by ISA, again, Independent Schools Association. So we're framing around kind of existing competitions and stuff that they can really get into. A STEAM and coding competition, again, where they can kind of work together and collaborate. Before they then go on to do Formula 1 in schools at that primary school level. Historical fiction competition, and then an environmental science challenge at the end of the year. So some really interesting ideas and concepts, all based around either competitions, certificates, awards, areas that will be really useful for them. And also it has a meaning there for them as well. It's not just like, oh, why are we actually doing it? It has a real sort of purpose. And then just to skip to year 12, rather than kind of going through all of it, again, you'll get the slides to kind of read the detail. You can see there a global politics course for half term. Pity any of the students going to year 12 in September, because that'd be me, delivering a global politics international affairs course with elections coming up next month, and an important one in America as well. There's going to be lots to get stuck into that. And then they go on to financial skills and leadership course, and then they choose either Goldcrest if they're a scientist, EPQ, probably if they're someone like me, a historian, and they want to kind of research a kind of particular piece, or if they're more kind of businessy orientated, a young entrepreneur. So there you just begin to see the kind of fluidity of what that will offer. Further areas we're going to review. Within all of this, we do need to look at kind of how prep works within what is actually a much busier school day. We haven't quite kind of got to the end of our kind of final findings on that one, but obviously we'll have done by the end of this term in terms of what prep will look like going forward. I'm well aware how busy a day this is, and I'm also well aware how long some of your sons and daughters spend travelling in and out of school every day. I'm also well aware that prep for the sake of prep is about the worst thing in the world. So trying to marry all those things together to create a policy that fits with the new curriculum. We are going to start looking at the uniform in terms of reviewing that, with some changes that would take place for September 25 at the earliest. And as I mentioned earlier, we're also looking at the sixth form academic offering, again, earliest changes September 25. So what are the next steps? So at the moment we're in our final planning stages in terms of kind of locking all of this into timetable, staffing, etc. In terms of those co-curricular pathways, students and parents will be asked to work together to decide what are those co-curricular pathways that you want your sons and daughters and they want to choose, at least for the first term. Other projects, because I just thought it's a good opportunity to highlight some of those. Over the next two summers, we're going to redevelop the whole of the STEM area of college, which actually also incorporates kind of photography and art in terms of where it is physically. Stage one this summer, ground floor, particular focus on design, engineering, technology, and that will all look very different in September. And then the following summer, we'll do the upstairs, which is more science and maths. So that will take place over a 2-year period. Further classroom developments across the whole of senior school, now that we've actually finished prep, will take place over the next 2 years, as and when we can, classroom by classroom. Bronte, we're going to redevelop, ideally from September 24 onwards, as obviously reception years 1, years 2 come out. Nursery, we're building a new nursery at the back of Clough, and that allows us to create a bespoke learning environment on the ground floor of Bronte, and the first and second floor will be accommodation pieces for continued group visits. There's going to be an exciting ground floor that's going to create a really interesting, different style of learning. We're also going to become a Microsoft Showcase School. They are the best when it comes to educational tools. Having worked at a school that's been a Microsoft Showcase School, the advantages of this are enormous and considerable. Not only in terms of the tech that we will get, but also the training that comes with it. And then working alongside you and with you to develop a really exciting digital learning experience in the classroom. In September, all of our staff will get their Microsoft devices. And the idea is that we will spend a year training them, make sure they feel comfortable using those devices in the classroom. Before in September 25, we'll be asking students to also bring their own devices. Probably initially in year 7, 8, 9, to be decided, and then probably optional above that, so you gradually sort of roll it through. And that's going to be an important development because actually for our young learners, they need to be digitally savvy because actually, as we all know, in the workplace, this is now a fundamental